Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylist podcast, where we talk all about interiors with interviews with interior stylists, writers and the fabulous homeware brands that make a house a home. I also catch up with industry experts in the know and get them to share all their knowledge and advice. There's so much to talk about. I'm your host, Emma Morton-Turner, an interior stylist and writer with a ton of experience. I set up InsideStylist.com so I can share all that interiors love with you. So don't forget to head on over to the website for not only the show notes from today's episode, but regular interior blog posts and a whole host of inspiration on the interior stylists and writers' profiles. But for now, enjoy the show. Hello. It's been a while, hasn't it? I've missed you guys. It's been a little bit crazy here at the Morton-Turner household. I've been toying with the idea of explaining why. I hate excuses. So I'm not going to give massive long excuses. I'm just going to say that today's episode is going to be a quick one. It's going to be just a load of real randomness, lots of statistics and numbers and interesting facts that I've had come across my emails recently, or I've heard on podcasts, and things that I think, oh, that's really interesting, and I think you'll be interested in it too. I will go into a little bit of detail why there's been a bit of a break. I just recorded a whole load of episode and went into such a long-winded personal stuff, and then thought, you know what? I don't think you guys need to know any of this. So I've pushed stop and started again, and I'm going to just try and keep it quite on point and not talk about the personal stuff. I'll just brush over it when the time comes. But I'm going to be talking about blogging, podcasting, a little bit of finance talk, a little bit of business strategy. I kind of thought this episode should be about things I've seen since I last spoke to you. And there's been so many injuries this week. I'm wondering if there's some sort of weird moon movement, like it's National Injury Week or something, because it's been phenomenal. I've had a friend's son got knocked over in Hyde Park and smashed all his eyes, all bruised, and it's horrible. I had a friend fall downstairs and her toe was at a right angle. Just so many things in 1 week. I've never known it. It's just been horrible. So I'm going to get that out of the way. We won't talk about that anymore. Let's talk about some of the things that I have been hearing about quite a lot. So I subscribe to loads of newsletters. I listen to loads of podcasts, and every now and again the same themes come up, and that's kind of what I'm kind of sharing with you today, is some of those random facts. So it's going to be a little bit jumpy, but just bear with me on that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, actually I was going to talk about blogging, but I'm going to talk about podcasting, because the podcasting is the reason that there's been a little bit of a break. Podcasts have been around for a decade. I was surprised to know that there are 750,000 podcasts. I thought there'd be over 1 million, but I mean, only 2 years ago there were 500,000. So it's growing in popularity, but it's actually growing in popularity of people listening faster than people are producing. I mean, there are millions of episodes all the time. And I always, whenever someone says to me, oh, I'm going to do a podcast or I'm planning a podcast, I just think, I'd love to explain to you just exactly how much work goes into it. There's like a ratio, and it's 4:1 of how long it takes to produce a podcast. So if you record for an hour, you've got 4 hours of work. I'd say it's probably more, actually. I think maybe 4 hours of editing and show notes. Plus you need to do the artwork. You need to share it on social. It's just such a massive time commitment. There's a thing called pod fade, which is when people start podcasts and don't actually continue with them. And pod fade is when your podcast only lasts up to 10 episodes. The average, I think, is 7. And 50% of all podcasts that start end in pod fade. And I was thinking, oh my God, this isn't pod fade for me. This isn't what's happened. I've just had a little bit of a lot going on, we'll say. And also things like the average podcast gets 141 downloads after 30 days. And I was really surprised by that. I thought that was quite a low number, because I don't know, after 30 days, I'd be very upset if I was only getting 141 downloads after 30 days. I don't know that if I would carry on with it. They'd have to be, I mean, I love doing it, but it's such a time commitment. Would it be worth it? Possibly that's why so many people drop after 7 to 10 episodes. I don't know. But there's a guy who has this, it's called Blueberry. It's BLUBRRY. And he has this website that tracks activity. And they say that only 25% of podcasts have regular new shows within a given year. So they start them and then they just dwindle off. And just recently there's been a massive surge in new podcasts. But then it's a bit like blogging. Everyone had a blog, so everyone wants to start one. And podcasting is the same. Everyone wants to do it. And then they start and they think, oh my God, maybe not. And there's a load of reasons why people the pod fade happens. People can't afford it because the cost of things like, it's not a huge investment. I mean, my microphone was £120 and it's been fantastic. It's massive. People are always surprised by how big it is, but it's like big and sturdy and doesn't move. If someone knocks the table, the whole thing doesn't wobble. It's brilliant. And then you have to pay like a monthly subscription for the Libsyn. I think I've mentioned it before, but it's like the hosting platform for your... It's basically like WordPress for podcasts. Loss of passion. People just lose interest. And I will never lose interest in interiors. I will always have something to say. Let's face it, I'm just always going to have something to say. But, I can see how people do lose passion for podcasting as much as for the topic that they're talking about. And I think the biggest one, the two biggies are people don't have time, or they don't realise how much time it's going to be, or they have a major life event. So I have had a mini break because I had it wasn't a major life event. It sounds very dramatic. I basically had a very, very short time frame to send my daughter off to America with complete strangers. My daughter's a scout and she got the opportunity to go to the World Scout Jamboree. This is the bit where I mustn't talk too long. She applied in 2017, did the weekend selection camp and came 39th, and there were only 36 places, so she was put on a reserve list. 3 weeks before they were all due to fly out, we got an email saying someone's dropped out, would she like to go? So we moved hell and high water to make sure she could go, and it was all very exciting but nerve-wracking at the same time. And then I put my daughter on a plane with complete strangers who had been hanging out and doing camps and doing training for the last year and a half, and I have never been so worried about her in my life. And everything kind of had to be not put on hold. I just had to prioritise my time, and the podcasting and the blogging had to just wait. And that is essentially why there's been no episodes. I have also had 2 shoots. So she went away for 3 weeks. I wasn't home for 2 of those weeks because I was away shooting as well. And of course, this all happens during the summer holidays. So it's just like everything happened at once. So I just thought, you know what? I need to choose what has to be done and what doesn't have to be done. And the podcast had to take a break. Having said that, this is not pod fade. Inside Stylist is not fading away because I have 3 podcast interviews lined up for the end, or 2 for the end of August and 1 in September. And I've got quite a few people who I've asked in the past who I need to get dates from. So we're just going to pick up where we left off and just keep going, essentially. Right, I'm going to move on to blogging. So blogging has been talked about quite a lot recently, as in, is it still relevant? I think it is. I mean, I think it's essential. I think everyone should have a presence online, and having a portfolio online is great, but being able to share your voice and kind of show your strengths and where your knowledge is and how much experience you have, it's just building on your credibility. And the fact that, there are like 500 million blogs out. I mean, literally, I'm not just throwing a number out there. There are 500 million blogs out there right now, but they're all creating content. They're all creating SEO. If you are talking about a brand that you've been shooting for or writing for, you can send links back to the website. The brands are going to like that. It's going to make you noticed. It's going to get you more work, essentially. It's as basic as that. And people do still read blogs. There's tests. Google Analytics will show you exactly how much people read a post. They can, they have these heat maps where they can see where people hover over a website. And it's really, really interesting because people do read all the way to the bottom. And the longer form content does really, really well. They say that about, like if you want to microblog and write more on your comments in your Instagram or on Facebook, that's also doing really well at the moment. So you don't want to do a blog and you want to just start writing more on your Instagram. But I would always say don't put all your eggs in one basket. Kind of get your name out there and get your content out there across the board. So if one suddenly goes, you aren't completely scuppered. Google do 100 billion searches a month. So it's all about that SEO. It's all about being found by Google. It's all about SEO. So what else have I found? I was talking about, I tell you what. So I use Free Agent. I've talked about them quite a lot. I use Free Agent accounting packaging, and I just love them. They make it so easy. And like I've got their app, and recently I had someone, I was chasing up an invoice, which is something I now do. I've made Monday my finance day. Actually, I'll talk about this in a minute with my new to-do list. But Monday is my finance day. And if I haven't got an invoice to send, I might chase up an old one. And when someone said, could you send me a copy of it? I could do it through the app because Free Agent has this ability to do that. And they have all these statistics on who pays late and how you can do this. And it talks about all sorts of things to do with money. So Free Agent was talking about, their blog is really good. It's got really interesting facts and stuff. And I always kind of skim over it when I'm supposed to be writing something else probably. But they have a whole thing about freelance work because obviously most of their clients are freelancers. And they had a whole thing on pensions. Now I have recorded a pension podcast, but I have to send it off and I haven't edited it yet. And I'm embarrassed to say how long ago I recorded it. So apologies to my lovely pension guy. I will get that done. But this Free Agent blog post was all about like a survey with the Freelancer and Contractor Services Association. Try saying that when you've had a few drinks. And they said that 25% of people who are freelance or small businesses have no pension at all. 49% make contributions towards their state pension and 25% contribute to a non-employer private pension or a personal pension. And that's quite interesting because I think a lot of people think, I'll get around to it. And then you never really do. But what was really interesting was that like people being freelance is really big now. So there's 15% of the workforce is now self-employed, and that's just rising. But the biggest group of people, like the fastest growing, is 65 plus, people who are 65 plus. And I mean, 35 to 54 is growing, but the 65 plus is growing really fast. I was really surprised by that, but it's really, really good. Another blog post I heard from Free Agent was about they kind of surveyed 700 small business owners, and they were talking about how much they work, like the hours they work, and 36% work 48 hours a week. I was thinking, I have no idea how many hours I work a week. It's probably quite a lot, but they said 8% work more than 64 hours a week, and then 81% said they worked through an illness. And that got me thinking, I can't remember the last time I was ill and took a day off work because I was ill. I think when you're freelance, it's almost like medicine because you just don't have time to be ill. Let me know if you get ill or if you just you've got too much work to be ill, you just get on with it. It's quite interesting. But the best statistic, and I completely agree with this, 76% of people surveyed said they would recommend being self-employed. I would recommend being self-employed, even if I did work 64 hours a week. I feel like I'm working 64 hours a week. I bet we all do, don't we? One of the other things, the business side of things, I'm going to keep this quite short, guys, is that when you have habits, you want to learn your habits and make habits and only do one at a time. And it's really interesting. The more you do, the less likely you are to succeed with that habit. And I was reading about writing goals down. If you write goals down, you are far more likely to achieve, but you're supposed to write them down. And you're supposed to write them down daily. You're supposed to write down your goal for whether it's a daily goal or a monthly goal or whatever. You're supposed to write your goal down at the top of a piece of paper every day, almost like if you're journaling, just so it's in the forefront of your mind. And what happens is when you have something in the forefront of your mind, you are more open to receiving the things that you need to do, or the decisions you make work towards that goal. So say you want to be healthier. You will write, I want to be able to run a mile without stopping within the next 3 weeks. You know, it's got to be that whole specific, measurable, timely, all that sort of stuff. But then someone says, oh, do you want to come to the cinema? You're like, well, I do, but really I should be going to the gym. No, I need to go to the gym because it's in the forefront of your mind. It's all that. So need to start doing that. I've got into this really good habit. So Emma, Mary and I are doing the Stylish Supper Club, and we're doing some, we've got lots of events lined up. We've got another event lined up. Our next one is on the 10th of September at House in Kitchens. It's going to be a bit of a kind of a networking sort of Supper Club. It's really exciting. I can't wait. But she was talking all about how she gets things lined up. And in her podcast, she was talking about how she spins plates. So I've utilised her kind of how you have lots of projects on the go at once and how you make sure you don't drop any of those plates, as it were. So what I've done is I've done a to-do list, and I turn the page into landscape, and I draw columns, and I put at the top of each column I put what I will be working on in any one week. So I've got like a column for Inside Stylist, podcast, shoot or feature, admin and finance, work, because that kind of gathers up anything that doesn't fit into any of the original columns, the Stylish Supper Club, and personal. And what was really interesting was that the lists I thought I had were weighted more in one section than the other. And the personal list, the book the dentist and call the builder and all those sorts of things, was really long. And I was spending way too much time on those. So I pushed those to one side. I could see what they were, and then I'll either do them at the weekend or make quick calls at lunchtime, but not spend any time on them during the week. But it was that whole new way of looking at how to make your time work well. And the other thing that I've done off the back of this is, so I've got this kind of column, and then I just draw a line across the bottom, and I write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the way along. And then I make different days for different things. So Monday is admin and finance, Tuesday is Instagram, Wednesday is website, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is blogs and podcasting. And it's just really interesting how you can just hear how someone works and come up with a better system. And that is something else I've heard quite a lot about. I've heard quite a lot about process. If you're working really crazy hours, the process isn't working. You need to look at the process and change it so that you're working the right hours and that sort of thing. A couple of other things that came up this week from like a business point of view is about people not sharing their ideas. Now, I think I've created a really warm and welcoming community, but I know there are some people who just don't want to share everything. And I don't really get it. I know that if you share, whether it's just an idea or a connection or whatever, that the kind of the feedback and the statistics on sharing things like that is that only 2% will actually do something with that idea you've talked about. People don't take action. They just listen and go, that's a great idea. I could do that. But then they don't. So it's all about being cool to share your ideas and put them out there. The last thing I'm going to talk about is Pinterest. I think I need to get a Pinterest expert on the podcast and talk to them all about it, because I did an episode a few months ago about how I grew my Pinterest account. I can't remember what it started at. It was something like 36,000 monthly views, and I got it from 36 to 100,000 in a month. So 36,000 to 100,000. And I literally just posted every day. I posted about 20 or 30 pictures in a day. 30% were my pictures. The rest were all random gorgeousness. And I redid all my titles and my descriptions. I added hashtags. And now, however many weeks later, I'm back to where I was. And it's really interesting that if you do not keep up with it, you will not get the results. And when I look at how many people come to my website from Pinterest, I can see the results 100%. So I need to get a bit of a better strategy on that. Maybe I need a column that says Pinterest, or maybe I need a social media column. I can't have any more columns. There's just too much going on. So I hope this episode was fun and interesting. I hope you learned something new. I'm just trying to think, is there anything I've left off? I have a little list, but it's all been very scribbled, and I really don't want to edit too much because I want to get this out. I want you to actually have something to listen to this time. Also, if anybody would like to hear an interview with someone specific or a specific job, something to do with interiors, then please let me know. I really want to make sure I'm giving you what you are interested in hearing about. I think we need to have a conversation with some assistants. I've got a few people in mind. I also really want to talk to some PRs. I'm kind of trying to find a date with a PR, a date to record with a PR, because I think that would be really interesting to hear. When I very first started Inside Stylist, I did so much research and I spoke to so many interiors PRs, and I had no idea how it ran from their point of view. And I think that would be really interesting, because you just assume everything's rosy on the other side of the fence, don't you? But it just isn't always. Anyway, well, this very short episode has gone on a little bit longer than I planned. I hope it's been interesting. I hope you've enjoyed it. I also hope I can stay awake long enough to actually get it out there without the house getting blown away. It is so windy tonight. Anyway, I am going to go, and I'm going to wish you a happy week, and I will speak to you very soon, I promise. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylist podcast. You'll find all the details from today's show over on the show notes at insidestylist.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love it if you would head on over to iTunes and rate and review it. It's the best way to help other people find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.